Hello, and welcome to a new episode of Iblis Manifestations Podcast. This has been a long time coming, of course, but something came to me just tonight, actually, and I figured that I think all of the things that needed to align for the very first episode to happen have finally aligned. So, I'm going to be sharing some of my thoughts and perspectives on things that are perhaps somewhat inexplainable in our world and in our society. Inexplainable in the modern sense. And what I'm going to talk about is actually something which I have been fascinated with for pretty much the entirety of my adulthood, but of course something that which its understanding of I have developed further and further, and I've reached new levels of actually understanding things. And that is of course going to be the correlation that exists between science and spirituality. So of course I already understand that to a lot of my very clever friends, I have a lot of intelligent friends and I am lucky in that regards. But of course, perhaps to a lot of those this might seem a bit like, holy shit, is Cheyenne okay? Has he lost his mind or what? But I think that it's important that we recognize some of these things. Because of course, one of the main things that I am actually going to be delving into is, of course, the existence of the paranormal. See, I called it existence. And I will explain further as to why I would even refer it in such a way. But before I continue, I just wanted to take a moment to say, well, thank you very much for joining my podcast today. Wherever and whenever it is that you're taking a listen, I appreciate you giving it your time, because I understand that time means everything. So yeah, I appreciate that. I'm currently coming to you at exactly 11:47 on the 2nd of March 2022. Now, of course, I don't really know when this is going to air, but I think, it might not be too long till I get it out. I think what's going to matter is the fact that I get it out to you. So, without further ado, I am going to go straight to the chase. But once again, thank you very much for joining me on the podcast. Sorry it took so long, but better late than never. So, the thing that I wanted to talk about with the paranormal aspect of things especially was, of course, I said the existence of it, right? So, obviously, when I turn around and say the existence of the paranormal, that already sets the precedence that, okay, I do in fact believe in these things. And I believe that spooky stuff is real. Well, it's a very complicated development that I have had through my own experiences, which has brought me to this conclusion. And this was a conclusion which I finally truly understood, let's say, somewhere around the summer of 2016. Doesn't feel like a very long time ago, but that was actually nearly 6 years ago. Fuck. Now, this is why I said I appreciate your time, because motherfucker is flying away like there's no tomorrow. No pun intended. And, the thing is, in society, a lot of times we're left with the thought that, things are... our reality is down to our own beliefs and our own perception of it, which to an extent is true, of course. But that doesn't mean that what we see and what we experience is the whole of reality. Okay? In fact, we know that even with the naked eye, we can only really see so much of what's around us. This is something that we have developed as a form of survival. You know, this is a part of our evolution, to see the colors around us in the way that we do, to see shapes, and, you know, to a certain extent, I think that it is really, really important to always remember that the world that we live in and what we experience, a lot of it is merely an illusion. But of course, that is a conversation for another day. However, the thing that I really want to get into is, just because we do not see something with our own eyes, does that really mean that it's not there? Think about it. I know this is the argument that we all keep coming into when it's the sort of fight between atheists versus the uber religious maniacs. And, you know, there's a thing here that we need to realize. And what we need to realize is the fact that not everything is just down to our beliefs of it. Us not believing in something does not simply make it go away. Okay. However, I do actually think that believing in something does allow you to connect with it further, or perhaps just simply be more open to it. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you a few stories about these things which changed my mind about how I view things. Because you know what? Once upon a time, Cheyenne from Trivex used to think that, oh yeah, you know, spirituality and everything is great, but there's no fucking way that they can, well, I can't actually put it into words, but what I can say is that there's no fucking way that what Cheyenne from 2022 knows can be possible. So I'm going to take you back to 2016. This was a time where I was finishing university, and myself and my partner at that time were looking to rent a new place. You know, we were sort of staying at my university accommodation, and of course I don't actually have any family in the UK, and to be honest with you, my friends at the time, were the number of them and the quality of them was actually quite scarce compared to what it is today, for which of course I'm very grateful for. But I digress. You know, we basically had nowhere to go, so we had to get a place of our own, which was that, you know, that felt like a natural thing to do at the time. So we go through a series of viewings, and then we get to, by the way, I should really make a disclaimer here. I know I haven't actually gone to the juicy parts yet, but I do want to say I'm not sharing this in a hope of creating a sensationalist situation where I'm saying spooky ghost stuff in hope of listeners. No. The honest truth of it is that my intention out of sharing this is that I hope that my experiences will perhaps in some way add to your own wisdom of how you approach life and existence as a whole, because it's really not as simple as it is. And I know that life itself is so fucking confusing and weird and just strange and overwhelming, but we still go full throttle sometimes. And, you know, I understand what it's like, but I'm really just hoping to share this with you so that maybe you can take away something from this for yourself. Perhaps if there are things that need to be resolved, or that you'll take a reflection. I don't know. You can take this however way that you want. I'm simply making you aware of my own intentions of sharing it, because it certainly is not a sensationalist, let's get as many views as possible. That's the least of my concerns, to be honest with you. So, back to the story of the house viewings. We viewed a few places, and there was always something that wasn't right. I can't quite remember exactly what the issue was, but I think we saw exactly 3 places. 2 were planned, the third one wasn't. The first one, this was in Birmingham, by the way, Birmingham, UK. Not Birmingham, Alabama. So we went to the first one. I think it was okay. Maybe price was a bit like, I don't know, not suitable or something. Whatever, I don't know. Then we went to the second one, and then on the second one, the letting guy turned around to us and said, "Actually, we have a secret viewing." So of course, me and my partner, we're complete weirdos, so we're like, yeah, sure, we'll go for the secret viewing. Let's see what you got. And of course, we had nothing else that was better to do, so we thought, fuck it, let's follow through with this one, see what he's got to show us. So we go slightly further up the road, and this was, I don't actually know if I should be getting into the specifics here, but this was sort of around the, it's around the Erdington area of Birmingham, which is a massive shithole. You see people walking around there with fucking 3-liter bottles of cider, and then they'll drink the whole thing in one go. I used to actually do the same whilst I was there. And it was a pretty dumb thing. So, it's not the best area, but then this particular set of flats, they're in like a slightly better area, and then, better or worse of an area. I don't know how you really want to judge that, or, it doesn't really matter, because, we go to the place, and it's like a series of flats made out of an old Victorian type house. And we, the one that we're actually viewing is at the attic, right? So this is in the attic of the house. And of course, we go there, we have a look around. I think there's like 4 or 5 other flats throughout the building. And then there's the one attic flat, I'm talking about it now, and I can just feel the vibe of the place, and it was, it wasn't actually a bad vibe. It was okay, but unfortunately, I don't really know, but I think something went wrong when we were there. I digress. I take myself back. See, this is me just having a conversation on my own, so you have to bear with me as I organize my thoughts and say, a million times. So, yeah. There's that. So anyway, I carry on. We went to the upstairs place. We looked at it. We thought it looked great. It was quirky. It was really fucking weird. It wasn't even that big. It was actually quite a small place, but we just thought, you know what? We're kind of different people. This looks like a different kind of place. We'll take it. It looks great. So yeah, I think we went for like a second viewing or something. We never noticed anything strange, but we went there and it was fine. And yeah, we were like, okay, we're gonna take this place. So fast forward, we got the keys to that place on, I believe, actually, I'm not going to share the exact days just in case this somehow comes back and haunts me. Again, no pun intended, but that was pretty good. So we end up getting the keys to the place, and then myself and the guys from my band, Trivex, they all helped me move there. Well, not all of them, my drummer and my bass player. And we moved there. We took our stuff, and then the next day we go and then we start to live there. And honestly, I don't know. It's so fucking strange looking back at this. So basically what happened was, I think we stayed for one night, and then obviously we had a lot of stuff to move in there. You know, it was a lot of work, and moving is always stressful. You know, I understand that. Chances are, if you are listening to this, you've been through some house moves. You know, even if just one. You know, I mean, I fucking hope you have. Anyway, and not live the same place for your whole life. But yeah, you know, it's a very stressful thing to go through. But we made it, you know, we got all of our stuff there. The kitchen was ready. It was really nice, you know, great. And I think the first night was okay. But I have to mention that on the first day that we moved there, I found something in the wardrobe which I found quite disturbing. And I don't know why, because it wasn't a disturbing thing. It just is that when I saw that, I felt, it, you know, like you get a weird gut feeling about some stuff. It's like somehow the information translates itself in your fucking stomach. And that's it. You know, it's not in your brain, it's in your stomach. I felt a very strange feeling in my stomach. And it was a very disturbing kind of feeling. It wasn't positive. It was weird. And I kind of got freaked out by it. And I asked, I say this as the light in my room is flickering. I asked one of the people who was helping us, I won't say who it was, but I asked her, I was like, hey, there's this stuff here. And what's the stuff? Okay, I'll get to it. It was a set of iron dumbbells and a picture of New York with the World Trade Center standing still. So you can only assume that, you know, the date would be at least, by that point, you know, then I think it would go far back at least by, 16 years maybe? So, yeah, and I was like, I don't know why this is left here. And I didn't say to her that I felt weird about it, but I just said, can we please move these to the other side of that place? And we did. We moved them to the other side of the flat, and we put them inside this little, is like a little storage space that's like on top of the ceiling kind of thing, you know. And anyway. And that didn't feel like it made it any better, but I did it just because I didn't want that in the same room, because this wardrobe that I'm talking about, this was actually in the bedroom, right in front of the bed. And yeah, so now we're gonna move to the second day that we were there. I believe that was a Sunday. You know, this is... It's all very crazy, but I'm having a hard time actually, you know, trying to go through with this, because looking back at this now, I have a very hard time actually understanding what the fuck even happened there. But of course I understand what happened. Of course I know what went wrong and what went, you know, I understand these situations a lot better now than I did back then. But I am also aware deep down that perhaps to those of you hearing this, maybe not all of you, but for most of you, this is the first maybe you're exposed to this kind of information. So please, you know, proceed with an open mind. I'm not trying to sell you anything or convince you. I'm just trying to tell you what I saw and what I experienced. So what happened was, I think... on the second day, my partner, she went towards the door of the flat, the entrance door, and the door lock started turning itself. And then it opened, and it turned itself very slowly too. You know, this is one of them locks, you really gotta give it some fucking force to twist the motherfucker. And it opened itself, and behind it there was no one. And the door slowly opened itself. And she then, out of nowhere started screaming, saying that there's a fucking baby here. So I saw the door thing happening, and then I had to look around. I shut it. I was like, okay, cool. That's weird. Whatever. I didn't think too much of it. And then I went back into the kitchen. Then I hear her screaming, saying, there's a fucking baby here. This house is so fucking haunted. So, of course, I walk in there and she's in bits, I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this story, but she was in fucking, like, a mess. I was like, whoa, what is happening? What happened? What just happened to my life? I just spent a fucking £1,000, whatever, on the deposit, and the first rent is like, this is not what I fucking need. But there was just something about it, I don't know. It's a very hard situation to look at because there's so many aspects, and then there's aspects of looking at the relationship itself. But then came actual experiences that I started having, which was then the first for me. So basically, what I think my very first full-on experience was that during the night, that same night, the first night, as I was asleep, I had my eyes closed. However, with my eyes closed, I kept seeing a face beneath my eyelids. And this was really weird. I was like, well, what's going on here? Am I tripping or something? And this is, of course, I should add the disclaimer that we were fucking sober. Like, for 2016 standards, that was the most sober week of my fucking life. Okay, so, yeah, and I just kept seeing this face. It was a purple face, which I actually then later commissioned to our designer to put on the cover of the Trivax debut album, Sin. Is very similar, actually. I think the way he made it out is actually quite terrifyingly uncanny to what I was seeing there. But what I was seeing was more sad and upset, whereas on the Trivax album the face is smiling. There's a difference, okay? But you see, if you can Google it and look it up for yourself if you've never seen it. But I saw that and I kept feeling like something was staring at me. I kept feeling like something was hovering over me, looking at me, being very unhappy with me for whatever reason, which I didn't quite understand at the time. And I was a very, I think, with my personality, I perhaps had a lot of insecurities, which I think when I got defensive about it, I projected in an extremely fiery way, like, fuck you, I had a real anger in me, which I still do today, but it processes so much healthier than it did then. And this was, I believe, I know I know what this was. This was, I believe, the remnants or the spirit of whoever was there before us. And I have a strong feeling that it was the belongings of this ex-person or spirit that I had moved away, because why would they be so upset with me? And I say this, fast forward to day 3, okay? Things are getting worse. We're experiencing really fucking freaky shit. We're constantly weirded out. We couldn't go in the bedroom. We just sat in the living room all the time and watched stuff. And we were constantly freaked out at like, oh my God, what the fuck is going on in this place? And it's just the two of us. It was a really scary situation. I almost feel like if I was on my own, I would have handled it better. But because I was with a partner and she was quite frightened, I think it was a lot more awkward. But there's one thing that's for sure, and it's the fact that both of us were seeing and experiencing some really fucking freaky shit. Now, what were some of the things that we were experiencing? Well, for example, you know how I mentioned that it was in this wardrobe that I took the stuff out of? At night, we would actually see like a smoke-like substance. It wasn't so much smoke like black smoke, but it was more like vape. You know how when you vape and then there's this white substance that kind of hangs around midair and then it kind of sits on top of a glass or something, you know, you can mess around with it. It was like that, but that was traveling through objects like the wardrobe, okay? Like it was going through the wall. That fucking, you know, this was the fucking freakiest shit. That wardrobe, it was a magnet one. So you got to pull on the handle to open it, and it actually kept opening and closing itself. And we both watched it fucking happen. And it's not like, you know, a normal person in these circumstances looks around and goes, oh, is there a draft coming in? No, motherfucker, there's no draft. Everything is shut. You cannot scientifically explain how the fuck something like that is happening. You know, and when we're both sober, when we're both completely like, okay, we were weird, wacky people, but you know, too many people have had these experiences and it always goes under the radar, you know. And yeah, well, I think the weirdest one was on the last day, because we only okay, I should get into this as well. We were only able to stay in that flat for 1 week, okay? Based on what I've said, some of you probably would be thinking, how the fuck did you manage 1 week in that place? Well, I don't know. I guess, I think there was a certain degree of stubbornness from my side as well. I was like, you know, fuck you, whatever. I'm making this work somehow. I'm notorious for beating a dead horse. You know what I mean? So basically, I think on the very last day, we then actually started hearing voices. Now that was the freakiest one, you know. Yeah, I've you know, sometimes when you hear something and then you think to yourself, oh my God, am I hearing voices? Was that my phone? What was that? Then you can actually discount it a lot easier when it's just you on your own. But when it's two of you and you both hear exactly the same thing at the same time and you both look at each other like, what on earth was that? That, my friends, is a different story, and is far more confirming when that happens, you know. So yeah, and it was very weird, you know. The electricity of the place as well. Yeah, this was one of the biggest lessons I had, is that anything paranormal always interferes with electricity. I've had more experiences of that later on down the line, which was obviously nowhere near as bothersome. But the electricity of the flat, it was like a fuse. Once you're in the flat, it's okay, but if you left the flat, the fuse would switch itself off, and if you came back up, you had to manually put it back on every single time, which means that obviously it would trip, you know. And that never happened when you were in there. Even if you were in there for, I think there was one time we were there for like at least a full day, slept overnight, still stayed there. But as soon as we went out and came back in after a cigarette, the fucking fuse was out again, you know. And it's very strange. This is honestly the most I've actually vividly remembered that place in a long time, because, you know, it's not something that I think I enjoy thinking about too much, but it's one of the biggest lessons I think I learned in life as well. And yeah, so it got really crazy on the last night. We escaped, we ran away, it ran away, as everyone always jokes with me. And yeah, we basically made a deal to go and actually stay at her parents' place until we figured something out. And as we went back to the place, it was really weird. It was like we had a falling out with whatever was there. And you know, this was at the pinnacle point where we were feeling that things were getting a bit crazy. And of course, we were kind of glad that we were about to leave. But this was the moment where we actually started seeing things around the flat, you know, like shadows, like moving around. Some of her clothes had been moved from one room to another and then folded, and then they were also wet. And this was like, we hadn't touched any of this. We had boxes being moved around. Boxes being moved around is a fucking big one, by the way. I've seen that happen on other occasions as well. And you always try and justify it to yourself, like how that's happened, but it's like, there's no way you can justify it. It's just fucking batshit crazy, you know. Our world is far more colorful than I think we realize. So, yeah, man, you know, it's, in a way it's wonderful, but also in some ways it's like, that is one area you don't want things to go wrong, man. You know, you don't want conflict in that realm. It's far more intense and far more draining than ever experiencing anything like that, I think, with the person that's around. Or at least it feels like it, because you're like, if a person is around and they're giving me grief, I'm gonna go fuck them up, or we're gonna talk about it and we're gonna squash this beef. But if there's no one there, that's a lot weirder, if you think about it. And yeah, I think the last symptom I can think about is the fact that during the time that we were there on that last night, as we were packing our stuff and we were trying to exit and we had a taxi waiting outside, a smell kept arising, and it smelled like the inside of a bin. And it was like, you'd move into any room, and even though there was nothing there, the smell would eventually appear next to you. And that was quite, that to me felt like, we don't want you here anymore. Which I understand looking back at it now. It's unfortunate. The person that I am today, if I was to experience that ever again, I would be so much kinder about it, I think, than I was. And, you know, you gotta give space to coexist. But and this was a really strange thing as well, actually. There was a poster that we had with my face on it. I actually, you know what? I'm oversharing now. You've heard enough. No, but moral of the story is, you know, this is the first I've publicly spoke about this in detail. And this was obviously only one experience. I've had others since, but the craziest thing about that was the fact that for months and months after that, and this situation reappeared a few times, I think in like even until 2018, I would, so for the first 3 months after we moved out of that place, I would wake up screaming every single night. I'd keep having dreams of ghosts, and every time I'd make eye contact with them, I'd wake up screaming somehow. I'm not sure exactly what specific thing fixed it, but obviously I then understood the spiritual world a lot better, and, you know, I had to do some housekeeping. So there is that, of course. But yeah, man, you know, these things, there's been cultures around throughout time, and they had far greater understanding of these things, especially if you look at the American Indians. You know, they were quite in touch with the spirit realm, and their, you know, and those who had passed away. Even if you look at certain Indian, as in Asian Indian tribes, you know, like you even look at the Agori, man, you know, those fuckers are fueled on death, but there's a sacred place for it. Death is sacred, and that doesn't mean that you go around every day seeking it, but is that you understand that it's an extraction, it's change, you know. Fire doesn't get created out of nothing. A chain reaction happens, which then allows for fire to come out. Death is that chain reaction for the spirit. Does that make sense? I hope not, because I would rather think I am insane than any of what I've said is completely true. But I'm afraid that it is. And, I've had other experiences as well, of course. I used to work at a pub in Sheffield, at this village. And I think one of the owners of that pub had, thrown himself out the window and unfortunately passed away. And, it was a very civil case of paranormal, but it was still quite visual. You know what I mean? We had these little light things there that you would turn. And, like the light dimmers, we had like 4 of them, I think. And it had access to the downstairs area of the bar, because the pub itself was like a house. The upstairs was empty, and it looked quite rough. But then the downstairs was all really nice, and that's where the customers went. A couple of times I actually played Tribex there when no one was there, so that was interesting. And the lights, after a certain time, if you are on your own, they would slowly dim themselves down. And obviously, if it was an electrical problem, this would switch itself off completely, right? But I watched them with my own eyes dim themselves down, like the wheel turning slowly, and then like the light goes from bright to dark in a matter of like 4 or 5 seconds. I watched this happen at least maybe 7-8 times. One night it happened like 3 times in a row, and then I started laughing. I said out loud, I was like, yo, I'm just cleaning up, I'll be out of here soon. Whatever. I guess it's probably your bedtime or whatever. I don't know, it's cool, don't worry about it. There's lots of these things that happen. And I think one thing that's really interesting, I probably should have pointed this out at the beginning of the episode. But one very interesting thing that I've always experienced is, how I said that this is down to what people believe and things like that. I would, every time I speak to someone about this topic, 99% of time they turn around and say, oh, I don't believe in anything like that. And then you get the conversation going. And then eventually, they'll come out with tons of fucking stories about shit like that that's happened to them. Children especially, And I think one of the reasons for that is actually to correlate the whole science and spirituality part. So from my understanding, when you are first born, your, let's call it the third eye, is much more capable of observing the 4th dimension. Okay? So, obviously, there's the 3-dimensional world, like I touch this table, you can hear it, and I can feel it, but there's the 4th dimensional world. How is it that when 2 people have an argument in a room, you walk in there, and you don't know that these 2 people have had an argument, no one has told you this, they're not physically showing symptoms that they have just had an argument. However, you walk in, and it's like walking into a wall of just feelings and tension, and you instantly know exactly what's just happened. Even though no one's told you, there's no physical evidence of it, but you feel these things. Or when someone says something to you and you know that they're not being truthful, not based on the information that you have, but there's just something about how they're saying it and their body language. It's not something you can really put your finger on. It's a feeling. Just like that feeling that I said when I opened that wardrobe and I saw those leftover equipment at the flat. When I had the feeling in my gut. It wasn't in my head, it was in my gut. I just knew then. So there is that whole realm to observe. Now to go back to what I was saying about the 4th dimension, So apparently when you're a child and you're born, you are much more prone to observing the fourth dimension. However, as you get older, through ways of adapting to the world and to society, but also the effects of diet, water, and all of these things, you end up shutting that off because it doesn't necessarily impact your survival any longer. But this is why you have plenty of stories of children seeing people that I guess weren't really there. There's plenty of stories of children who have seen these things, who have seen these people, or they've said, oh yeah, grandma's there, and things like that. Everyone always puts this down to the imagination. I say, I think not. I think that's because they can actually see them. And I, for myself, actually have very, very weird memories. Like, since going through all of these experiences and certain practices that I was doing in those years leading up to it, which actually unlocked a lot of memories from my own childhood. Yeah, there is merit to these things. Almost every person that you will ever speak to, even if they say they vehemently oppose any like spooky stuff or anything like that, they will have at some point had experiences of their own, and it only takes a little bit of just conversing with them until eventually they turn around and say, oh, actually, and then, you get into the good stuff. But of course, it's important to point out that when I'm talking about these things, I don't really know what's happening. I have my own suspicions as to how this sort of thing could be the result of brainwaves. How when you have one experience, the experience itself could be so intense that it somehow gets engraved into the air. I don't know how that works, but I believe in it. But this is also why I find things like, radio waves or anything electromagnetic waves and things like that. Whilst it's good that we've progressed with science, I'm also really concerned about how some of these things could impact our existence. Could they, because from my understanding, if things like that exist, because spirituality to me is not, necessarily lighting a candle and then expecting like heebie-jeebies to come around. That's not what it is. It's I look at it from a scientific way where I try to understand, and I try to understand just the same way that I try to maintain my relationship with people around me. There's another aspect where you gotta be, and I think it's the same kind of dimension as well, where you could get, not everyone has your best interest either, I'm pretty sure that some spirits can be fucking assholes too, but it's down to you whether you let them in or not. This is why drinking actually, there's a reason why they're called spirits. When you're drinking alcohol and whiskey and things like that, when those motherfuckers are in the cellar, there's all kinds of things attaching themselves to that, and you're putting it straight into your system. And there's an interesting theory actually that I read on this as well, which again, all hypothetical. This is a very tough thing to fact check. All you can do is really reflect on your own personal experiences, and I really mean experiences and not beliefs. You have to set aside beliefs and really look at this sort of thing objectively, and because I have a feeling that whilst I've shared the story so clearly, and obviously these are all very physical things that happened, as well as mental, of course, I feel like maybe some of you aren't actually as shocked as I was initially thinking to myself, because the more I've talked about this, the more I've remembered that every fucking human being experiences this. We all get visited sometime, somehow. And I think it's important to consider that into our daily lives. Really quick example of that also. I mean, I told this to him, and I hope he doesn't mind me sharing this. But an ex-bandmate of mine, he had a cat, and I love cats. You know, they're the guardians of the underworld. In fact, quote unquote. And I truly adore cats. I really make a connection with them, not just because they're cute or whatever, but I really feel like I feel a connection with them. Like I understand them and I value them. Obviously, there's the animal aspect in me as well, that I have a big ego and I have to let them know that I am the alpha. But besides that, I really admire them. And my friend, who used to play in my band, his cat, I think I knew her for maybe 8 years. I think this happens September 2020. This happened. And by that point, I will have known her 7 years. Yes. So 7 years I knew this cat. Obviously, I hadn't seen her as much for the last few years, but I know she was getting older and a little bit weaker and things like that. You know, it's really sad, but it happens. And coincidentally, I actually went for my first, I don't know if I should talk about it on podcast, but here we are. I actually went for a Reiki session with, by a friend of mine, and she's good. You know, I've not really had that experience with any other people, but she did some interesting stuff there, especially looking at the couple of months or few months after I had that session. Just like, you know, it's good. You know, if you got the right person, they can really do some magic. And I think for me, it was for a reason that I met this person. Anyway, I had that Reiki session and I was doing a crazy fucking thing, you know, where I was like on a 30-hour fast. And then I came home and I was like really tired after that. I felt like fucked up. But I went to sleep, and whilst I was asleep, something came and sat on me. Like I felt actual physical weight on me. And this is not that long ago. And it didn't really scare me because obviously I know what I know now. And, you know, sometimes these things I think should scare you. But really, generally speaking, I think it's not about fear. It's not about intimidation, you know. That part only exists because it is the unknown. And once it stops being the unknown, it's kind of like, okay. It's kind of like just like interacting with an alive person. It's just as nerve-wracking as that can be. Which is both very little, but also a lot, depending on the circumstances. So I felt something come and sit on my back, and I felt the weight of it, and it was almost like, it was really heavy. I was like, fuck, you know, like, you know, this is, I'm feeling this, like, and at first I was like, you know what, I'm going to let you off. You stay there. I don't mind it. But then after a while, I felt like, no, you know what, this is kind of pissing me off now. So I just kind of got up. I raised my arms and I lifted my shoulder, and the weight moved off. It felt like it ran away. But after it did, I was like, now that it's gone, there was okay, that was interesting. Like almost like a good feeling, like, oh, that thing. And I didn't know what it was, obviously. And the next day, it felt like a small fat creature sitting on my right shoulder as I was holding my pillow and trying to sleep. And when I made a jump off, it felt like it jumped onto the floor and sort of crawled into nothingness somehow. It went away, you know. And the next day, I had the news that my friend's cat had passed away. The night before, which was, of course, the night I experienced that. So, you know, it's hard to Obviously, it's hard to make sense of everything, and I'm only just sharing with you a lot of what I know. And I don't even know if it's a good idea to share this stuff, but I feel like even if it causes some trouble, or even if people in the future use this against me as some kind of like, oh wow, Shine from Trivex is some kind of fucking schizo or whatever, I think as long as it gets to the right person and it makes them aware of what they need to be aware of, then that's good. And by good, I mean in the sense that hopefully it just allows you to have a better understanding of the world. Because obviously, I also don't really want you to take what I'm saying as facts. The part that I want you to take from my end of it is the fact that I did experience these things. I'm not making any of this up. This is my life experiences. And whether... Now you can actually question whether I really experienced these things, or if I imagined them, or if there was some reasonable explanation. There's little you can do to change my mind about them, because I have spent a great amount of time on this, and I have been as open-minded as you possibly could be and still drawn the same conclusions. And but on the other hand of it, what I want is for you to, think about it or take it however way you wish. But on a positive note as well, is let's say that all of the experiences that I just said are real, okay? And that shows us one thing, that life is precious. Life is extremely valuable. And it is so goddamn short and limited. Every day is a gift and a blessing to have. And to have people that we care about around us, whilst they're there, or whilst we're there. It's the same for them too. But that's truly a beautiful thing. And I really hope that we all acknowledge that and we come together on that, and we make sure that life is sometimes fucking cruel, man. Yes, it's beautiful, yes, it's precious, but it is fucking brutal. So you gotta act by the premises of time, and time is often very short. Well, it never feels like it's enough. So if you gotta do or say something to someone, you have to do it, because if that goes by, you'll never ever get the chance again. And I know that sometimes this is out of our control. And of course, if you lose someone that's dear to you, you can feel like you can say to them what you want to say. And a lot of times it does feel like they actually do listen. But in any case, if you happen to have anyone like that in your life, I just want you to, if you need to do that, just, don't hesitate. Just go ahead and do it, man. Life is really short. It's too short. And it takes a lot to make it work too, okay? Logistically speaking. Yeah. So I guess on that emotional note, I may be ending the episode. So, I know I talked a lot, and I know that a lot of what I've said might be hard to digest. I'm certainly not trying to start a fucking cult here, as some people actually initially thought. You might think this is fucking batshit crazy, by the way, but just on a lighter note, when I first released Iblis Manifestations, some people, like some of my older contacts who are still in touch with people who used to know me from back in the day, they're like, oh, I've heard Cheyenne has started a cult. It's like, fuck off, cunt. This ain't no cult, I'm just sharing my personal experiences, and I'm hoping that, people, will be able to learn something from them. I'm not trying to paint a picture of my own ego here or anything. I feel like, I'll be honest with you, deep down, I feel like our world is at a bit of a ticking kind of moment, and I just want to do what's right and not fuck around anymore. So this is just one step of that. So, and on that note, I'd like to thank you for listening to this episode. I hope that you enjoyed it. Feel free to share if you really wanna. Feel free to discuss. Feel free to let me know. I'm not quite as elusive as most assume me to be. Sometimes I am, but that's just, this just comes with the territory of being a black metal musician. But I also like to think I'm a lot fucking more than that, just that. So yeah, feel free to subscribe or whatever it is that people do. I don't know. This is not really a thing. Like I said, I'm not trying to pitch or sell fucking anything here. I'm just trying to share some information based on experiences I've had and hope that it will help you on your journey in life and death. More episodes will be coming soon. Thank you so much for listening. This was the first episode of Iblis Manifestations Podcast. I thank you and bid you farewell.